place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to check us out online, our website is www.xzoneradiotv.com. On all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can listen to the X-Zone 724-365 at www.xzoneradiotv.com. And now, did you know that if you're out on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone? As well as the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-Zone -1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, and that's courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet is needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. My guest this hour is Brandon Callahan, and Brandon grew up with an insatiable desire to learn everything he could about anything mysterious. He's been actively investigating paranormal activity in the field for many years now and has developed a method of tracking potential hotspot locations throughout the world. Joining me now is Brandon Callahan, and Brandon, welcome to the X-Zone.
Hey, Rob, how you doing?
Doing good. Thanks very much for joining us again. So for our new listeners...
Thanks for having me.
Hey, my great pleasure. So for our listeners who may not have had the pleasure of hearing you the first time you were with us a couple of months ago, tell us about yourself again, and what was it in your life that made you want to know and learn everything about the mysteries and the paranormal?
Sure, absolutely. You know, I was honestly... It was just one of those kids that just couldn't get enough of the ghost stories and the mysteries and everything else, and so it really just never faded as I grew older, and really, you know, to kind of practice what I preach, or you know, whatever the case might be. Over years and years growing up, I read everything I could read, and just nothing was enough. And it was during my time in the Air Force overseas when I had a personal experience that kind of drew me into wanting to get out into the field and actually see what I could find for myself. And so that happened many years ago, and really ever since then I've been out in the field working on different cases and researching different topics and all that sort of thing, and some of them have been turned into books. Wow.
Tell me about your most hair-raising investigation or paranormal case that you've worked on.
You know, really, to be honest with you, oddly enough, I've been in the field actually doing this research for right around 10 years now, and really the two cases that have been what I consider life-altering.
Right. Why don't we do? Go on. I was just going to say I just looked at my clock and I've got to take a break. When we come back in 2 minutes, tell us about the two cases that you were just going to tell us about. X-Zone Nation, sure. Brandon Callahan is my guest, and we'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
his new book, Wandering About, author David Strumfeld talks about the universe, existence, civilization, and the nature of mankind. Wandering About is a comprehensive guide that discusses man's everlasting struggle to learn what his place in the universe is and what the true purpose of his existence is all about. By dealing with many forms of science and humanity, Wandering About also serves as an intellectual autobiography, an expedition through author David Strumfeld's mind and his life as a human being. Through the reader's views, readers will learn many relevant things such as the development of civilization through the ages, how science helped mankind to make many crucial discoveries about the universe, why people's curiosity and imagination never get satisfied, and much more. Wandering About promises to push the reader's reasons and thinking to the very edge. To order Wandering About by David Strumfeld, go to www.wanderingabout.net. That's www.wanderingabout.net. Welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. My special guest this hour is Brandon Callahan, and Brandon is the author of The Agony That Remains and The House Where Evil Lurks, both published by our good friends at Llewellyn. All right, Brandon. Sorry I had to cut you off there, my friend. I asked you a question, you started answering me, and then bang, I look at my clock, and it's commercial time. So please, my apologies, and continue.
Not a problem at all. Honestly, I mean, what we are here to talk about are those two life-altering cases, really, that I have worked over the course of these past 10 or so years, and both of which are now published. So, my first book was more focused on a private residence. A gentleman that had some issues in his home that turned out to be a lot bigger than really any of us had anticipated. And then this newest one, which was on such a different level of just phenomenon in general. We can talk about all the different things that had been reported, but then when you experience all these things, that's what really turns everything on a new kilter. It really just makes you reevaluate exactly what it is that you believe.
Okay, so let's take the first book that you wrote with what it was about, The Agony That Remains. Tell us about that first one.
Well, actually, the House Where Evil Lurks was the first
one.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Okay. Oh, no, that's okay. And that actually that involved a gentleman who had a disability. He was deaf and happened to live in a home that had been owned on a couple different occasions by his family over the course of quite a few years. And when he was there by himself, the activity that everybody else in his family had been experiencing, the knocking, the footsteps, the whispers, and the voices and everything kind of escalated, well, because he couldn't hear anything. He couldn't hear anything that was going on in the house, I think. That was my theory. And it turned out to be very physical with him. And after it became physical enough to actually cause him to trip and fall and sustain a concussion, he decided to approach us. And when we began to investigate the home, it became very clear very quickly that this was something that was very powerful. And it was something that, a lot of times as investigators, we go into a home or something like that and we investigate. The activity sometimes is very slow, sometimes is very hidden and subtle. But in this instance, it was as though as soon as we walked through the door, it was as though whatever was there was not only not hiding, but it invited us in. And it was ready to accommodate anything that we wanted. And that became a problem very quickly.
All right, so how, what was it? What kind of atmosphere was it? What was going on? How did you feel going in there and investigating?
Well, the more research that we did regarding the property itself, it became more and more apparent that in the few years between ownership of the house, it had been abandoned. And there had been a lot of people coming in and going out of the house and in the house. And I think with what we had discovered down in the basement area, there was this dungeon-type room that had all kinds of graffiti on it, most of which was what most people would be considered satanic in nature. You'll see the pentagram and things of that nature. There were also deep ridden claw marks within the actual the concrete on the wall, which were really unexplained, and as it turned out, allegedly hadn't even been there until our presence occurred. And so when we did our initial walkthrough, we actually had a lady leave the house immediately when she went down to the basement during our walkthrough, because she had just been down there and felt a little queasy. And in our review of the basement, I had asked the gentleman about the claw marks that were all over the walls. And so she went back down there, not remembering any claw marks. And when she realized that they were there, she got sick and immediately left and would not go back into the house. Mm-hmm. And so, and these were all over. It's almost a 7-foot tall ceiling in this particular room, and these claw marks were everywhere, up and down, top to bottom. We initially thought, well, maybe there was a critter of some sort, a dog, a raccoon, something that, might have been trapped in there or something like that. But this was different. I mean, it was eye level and above, and apparently hadn't been there before we ended up showing up. And so we had a lot of signs and really just intuition type feelings pretty much from the get-go that something was very, very out of place. And as the investigations went on, it certainly became more and more clear that that was the case.
Now, were you able to identify the identity of this spirit, of this demon, of this object?
I'm careful about that word. I'm very careful about using that word as far as demons go. Mm-hmm. But I had never experienced anything so forceful and so dangerous, which ended up actually through, I believe, my own fault, coming home with me one night later on during our investigation. But we never did get a name. We never really did get a resolution. The gentleman that had lived there, there were some instances that had occurred that he, no blame to him whatsoever, but he ended up leaving and would not come back. And eventually the house was forfeited over to the city, and I believe has been rented out several times to families over the last few years, none of which have stayed there more than a couple months, thankfully, and now stands abandoned. And so we never really did get a true final resolution. It was more of an experience. I learned a lot as an investigator in person during all that, because it was on a different level than anything I had ever encountered.
Unreal. How can something that has no weight, volume, or mass cause all the havoc it does?
Well, I think in terms of weight, volume, and mass, we tend to look at everything from the human perspective of what's right in front of me. What is tangible? What can I hold? What can I explain? What can I repeat? What can I produce? But when it comes to certain energies and it comes to certain powers that I believe that this world possesses, that faith possesses, that non-tangible things, as they manifest, I think it becomes so powerful on certain occasions that you can't even really wrap your mind around it, because we are trained from the day we're born to really only assess what it is that we can hold in our hand. And so I think the potential power of these sorts of things is way beyond our comprehension. And so it's difficult to really explain it away or even put it into words in a lot of cases, because it's something that we have yet to find absolute answers to. And I think that's part of the draw of this type of research in the first place.
Do you think that we'll ever find the answer?
I do believe that at some point we will be able to, I think we'll be able to say without question that there is something out there. There is something that is physical and is real, whether it's another plane of existence or whatever it might be, whether it's heaven, hell, or anything else, a third dimension. I do believe that at some point, as technology is going, I absolutely believe that we will be able to, without question, have tangible evidence of that.
So far, what is the evidence that we have that we can unequivocally use as an argument that the paranormal is indeed real, and it's not a psychosis, it's not a mind over matter, it's not our mind playing tricks on us, that this is something that needs to be investigated as well as studied and respected?
Well, I don't know that we have that. I don't know that we have that yet. I have seen pictures, I've seen video, I've heard EVPs, I've gathered all this information. When I review the audio and the video from investigations that I conduct, I know what the entire situation was going in. And so I believe that in a lot of cases that an outsider approaching this particular investigation and a review and analysis of the information that's been collected, I think it has to be approached with an open mind, simply because if you're not physically there, it is very hard as a skeptic to really accept that everything is factual, that nothing's been rigged, nothing's been set up. But, having been there, and that's what took me out into the field, is the fact that I had this skepticism within me, and I needed to hold this and feel it and listen to it and see it for myself. And I think, to be honest with you, many skeptics, I think, spend a lot of time behind their keyboard. And I think they spend a lot of time behind a desk. But they don't go out looking for that feel, that sight, that
exactly.
tangible thing. And so, to be honest with you, until we can put our heads together and get out there, I think that's where we kind of start banging our heads against the wall a little bit.
It reminds me of the Monday morning quarterbacks.
Absolutely. Because it is. It's very easy to say, that Alex Smith was awful yesterday. But you know what? It just happens that way. But there's nothing that I did that could make it better. And so I couldn't agree with you more.
Listen, my friend, you and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Thanks so much for being with us, Brandon. I enjoy our conversations. Exonation Brandon Callahan is our guest. He has 2 books out that you can go to Llewellyn's website at llewellyn.com and purchase. The Agony That Remains and The House Where Evil Lurks. I am Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone, and I just forgot to tell you that he also has a Facebook page, facebook.com/Callahan Author. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. Brandon and I will return on the other side of this news break as we continue from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Unwilling to be the government's deadly assassin, gifted psychic Kahara Mitchell went AWOL and ended up buried under rubble in the wake of a great tsunami. She regained consciousness far from Earth on the medical ship of a Daguerreonian intergalactic fleet. Has she been rescued or abducted by aliens? The Chalice of Carrie, Kahira O'Donnell's latest paranormal science fiction romance, is the passionate story of an Earth woman and her destined mates, twin kings from another galaxy. Kahara uses her gifts fighting alongside Lords Rom and Ra in a war that will determine the destiny of galaxies. The Chalice of Carrie by Kahira O'Donnell is now available at KahiraO'Donnell.com or at Amazon.com.
Named one of the world's greatest psychics, Elizabeth Joyce is now giving readings worldwide via Skype. Elizabeth Joyce is recognized for her clairvoyant ability to help find missing persons, her analysis of dreams, past life regression work, mediumship, and her accurate predictions. Elizabeth has been a frequent guest on the X-Zone radio show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, now for several years. For an appointment with Elizabeth Joyce, call 201-934-8986 or Skype at elizabeth.joyce. And for more information, you can always visit Elizabeth Joyce online at www.new-visions.com.
From the Canadian News Network, I'm Rob McConnell. Beautician Sarah Bryan, 28 of Wakefield, England, who garnered world notoriety last year when she introduced a wearable dress made of 3,000 Skittles, returned this summer with a wearable skirt and bra made of donated human hair, a substantial amount of that, she said, pubic hair. She admits having had to work with an eye mask, breathing mask, and thick gloves out of fear of donors' hygiene habits. More conventionally, designer Van Tron of Brooklyn, New York, won the 12th annual wearable toilet paper wedding dress design contest in New York City in June with a $10,000 prize from sponsors Charman's and Ripley's Believe It or Not. Attorney Chris Dyer convinced a jury in La Crosse, Wisconsin in June that there was reasonable doubt about what his client was doing in a family's basement when he was discovered pants down, perched doggy style over the family's golden retriever. Client Daniel Reinsvold, a stranger in the house, told the jury that he has an intestinal disorder that makes him subject to emergencies. What Reinsvold was doing was apparently perfectly clear to the resident's 17-year-old daughter, who discovered the scene and reported Reinsvold screwing Cooper. And a vet said later that Cooper showed signs of trauma and rape. Nonetheless, Reinsvold was convicted only of trespass and disorderly contact. British student Joshua Browder, 19, created an easy-to-use computer app to help drivers fight parking tickets they believe unjust, and now reports that users have won 160,000 cases out of 250,000 cases, all in London and New York City, by following his question and answer chat interface at donotpay.co.uk. Browder said he was motivated to develop the app, which as of now is still free of charge, after himself getting about 30 tickets he says he did not deserve. A bicycle thief was stopped on June 10 when the bike's owner and several other people chased him from the Walmart parking lot in Eagle Point, Oregon, drawing the attention of a passing rider on horseback, Roberta Borba, who joined the chase and moments later, according to the report in Portland's The Oregonian, lassoed the man and restrained him until police arrived. Not many DUI stops result in attempts to locate the suspect's chastity belt key, but the May 14 sobriety checkpoint stop of Curtis Edom, 35, in Clinton, Tennessee, certainly did. Edom was outfitted in red mesh see-through hose, according to the police report, with the ribbon tied in his goatee, and also a little skirt, perhaps a tutu, when he told officers that he needed his key, which happened to be on a necklace worn by his passenger, a highly intoxicated 44-year-old woman. Thus, Edom was unable to unlock and remove the chastity belt, which had been attached to his penis. There was also a handgun, illegal in the state of Tennessee for an intoxicated person to carry. Charges in this case are still pending. In May, a 16-year-old boy in Lakewood, Washington, not only used Facebook to set up a marijuana dealer robbery, one of many people lately to incriminate themselves on social media, but during the robbery itself accidentally shot himself in the groin and femoral artery, requiring life-saving 7-hour surgery. With stories of the strange, the weird, and the bizarre, from the Canadian News Network in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, I'm Rob McConnell.
This is News from the X Zone. I'm Amanda Curran. To mark the 47-year anniversary of the first moon landing, the Smithsonian Institute has released a 3D digitalization program that will allow space buffs and amateur astronomers to experience what it was like inside the Apollo 11. By using high-tech imaging systems to capture thousands of images of the rarely seen interior of the Apollo 11 capsule and stitching them together to create an immersive 3D video, as well as detailed 3D models, a 3D scanning team and staff have created this immersive experience at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. A new study now suggests that a small planet may have smashed into the moon, causing the grooves and gashes that surround the mare Ibrium. While previous research indicated that the 720-mile-wide Ibrium Basin was created by a giant ancient cosmic impact, which was later filled with vast lakes of lava that cooled to become dark rock 3.8 billion years ago. Now researchers from the Sandia National Laboratories in Albuquerque, New Mexico, may have solved the mystery. By performing hypervelocity impact experiments, they found that the mysterious grooves were etched by chunks that sheared off the sides and tops of the impacting asteroid when it hit the moon. Scientists now believe they may have discovered several other basins on the surface of the moon that may have been created in a similar way. New footage caught on CCTV by a local resident may indicate the return of a ghost of a child in the Stratfordshire area. Cannock Chase became notorious for sightings of the infant ghoul in the 1980s, and last year, a full-time Ghostbuster recorded chilling footage of a black-eyed child's ghost roaming about in the woods. But now local man Ian Hawke managed to capture the ghostly apparition from his home security camera. Hawke does believe it is the ghost of a child playing in the road, but claims he is not afraid of it. It's the living that hurt you, not the spirits, he said. Hawke believes his house is haunted and is looking for a medium to investigate this paranormal activity. I'm Amanda Curran, News from the X Zone.
Welcome back, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and I'll tell you something. This entire thing about the paranormal has been haunting, if you'll excuse the pun, people for hundreds of years. And there are so many people in today's society with all the modern technology at their disposal who are doing their very best to try and solve the mysteries that for some reason mainstream science doesn't want to get behind. And Brandon, I have to ask you, why doesn't mainstream science just get in and work with you guys?
You know, it's an excellent question. And, you know, for the life of me, I can't give you a great answer other than the fact that I have actually been lucky enough to have worked with in the past, just at my regular day job, a gentleman who had actually received a PhD in particle physics from Duke University. This is not an unintelligent man. And you know, when he found out the work that I did on the side, the work that we do, he actually showed a great amount of interest. And I was lucky enough to have him investigating with us during the process of my writing of The House Where Evil Lurks. And he could not come up with a lot of, well, solutions or answers to things that were happening right in front of his face. And it made him ask more questions. And so, as I kind of alluded to before, I'll be honest with you, Rob.
Oops, I'm sorry about that. I hit the wrong button.
That's okay. I'll be honest with you. I think a lot of it comes down to willingness to participate and laziness. Because, we can split atoms. We can do all this. We can do anything that science can replicate. It is accepted and required, which is fantastic, because how else are we going to evolve as people? But when it comes to the unseen, it's more difficult. You have to think outside the box. You don't replicate it right there on the spot. That's just the simple fact of the matter. And so until more people in the scientific community really buy into that and feel that it's worth their time, which unfortunately probably won't be for quite some time because we don't cut paychecks. I mean, a scientist gets paid and gets paid well for looking for a cure for cancer or anything else. And that's incredible work that they do. But as you just said, for hundreds and thousands of years, everybody wants to know what happens after it ends, Sure. And so I do think it's worth the time. I do think it's worth the investment. And if we were to be able to put our heads together, I do think we could come up with some kind of tangible answer.
But what about the psychological effects of the paranormal on the people within the homes? Children, mums, dads, grandfathers, grandmothers. They are living through a traumatic time in their lives, and yet the people who can help them and give them the mental help as well as the physical help, if they so need it, they're not really there for them.
No, they're not. And I think in a lot of ways that it is put on the investigators' hands to really be able to function and assist outside of what might be their normal realm of expertise. I don't claim to be any sort of a psychologist, and I do my best. One of the first things that I discuss with the people that I work with when I go into their home is, number one, there's no guarantees.
Right.
Number two, I can't give you absolute definitive answers. Whether I've got something on my recorder that says my name is such and such and this is why I'm here, I cannot tell you absolutely and definitively that this is exactly what it is. And so there has to be a trust. And all I can do is I can present myself and state for my client that I am willing to put in the work. I am willing to stand by you no matter what. And I have had many instances where things get bad. They get really bad. And I may not be able to fix your problem, but at least we can come out of it with an understanding. They need to know in a lot of cases they're not crazy. That's as simple as it gets. And there's a lot of people that simply will just turn the table on them and say, maybe you are crazy. But if I experience what they experience, either we're both crazy or, there's got to be some other explanation. And so I think being open-minded and understanding and just caring for the people that you're working with, I think goes a long, long way. And so for me, that's one of the biggest things is allowing these people that live in this fear, which I think is completely unacceptable, but allowing them to know that there's somebody out there that cares, somebody out there that understands, and somebody out there that's not going to judge them. That's huge because people do judge one another. It's shameful the way that we treat each other.
Oh gosh, isn't that the truth? But I guess what I'm getting at, Brandon, is why should you, a paranormal investigator, be burdened with all this responsibility instead of it being shared amongst other professionals?
You know what? And I think in many ways, because I do try to communicate with other people that work in different areas of this field of research and everything else, and I have good relationships with people like that.
Yeah.
But, to be honest with you, I don't consider what I do, it's difficult to say that I don't consider it a burden because I do what I do out of choice. And through past experiences, especially since I've been working in this field of research, I understand that even even the most badass guy out there that thinks he's beyond anything, not scared of anything, pure evil and pure darkness is much more than our minds can comprehend just sitting here talking about it. It's so much more powerful. It's a joke. When anybody talks down about what these things can be capable of, it's simply because they haven't experienced it. And so considering it a burden, in a way, of course, it's life-altering. I try to protect myself. I try to protect my family. I try to protect the people that live in these homes as best I can, as best I know how. That's my passion. That's why I do what I do, is to try to get answers. But the bottom line is, people do things for their own reasons. I can't explain why, the guy that might be able to find the answers decides that he's going to sit behind the desk while I go out there and I'll stand on the front lines, just simply because it's just what I feel like I need to do. And I think by and large, I've been able to help more people than not, just in some way, whether it's acceptance of what's going on or, whether it's a possibility to alleviate the problem,
sure,
which we have been able to do. And so it all comes down to belief systems, and it all comes down to really what people value. And I value people, and I value people's peace within their homes. I value people understanding, and I value the fact that I can provide something to somebody that feels like there's nobody there. And how much of a helpless and frightening feeling is that when you're living in terror, first of all, and then second, there's nobody there to listen that's not going to call you crazy and want to throw you in a rubber room.
That's my point exactly. These people are left out to hang except for the work of paranormal investigators.
Robin, I will throw this in there because I do think it's really important, is the fact that many investigators are out there for themselves. And I feel it's disgraceful, and I think it's despicable. Because a lot of people that have internal fighting within their team, they can't even get a hold of their own lives, their own demons and everything else, so to speak. But they invite themselves into a home where there's true problems, and they can seriously make things worse. And so I believe that everybody, no matter if you quote unquote call yourself a demonologist, which I'm skeptical of to begin with, or if you call yourself an investigator, whatever you might be careful. Be careful who you pretend to be. Be honest with yourself, so then you can be honest with the people you're working with. Because I have seen so many people out there that bring themselves into these volatile situations and should not be there in the first place, and end up making matters a lot worse, not only for themselves, but their clients. And they do it just because they need some recognition.
Well, what was it that Shakespeare said, to thine own self be true?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if you can't, and I had to ask myself many, many hard questions when I was doing these investigations. I had to say, is this worth it? Is it worth the anguish? Is it worth the threats? Is it worth it? And I think if you can't honestly look yourself in the mirror and answer those questions, then you need to be far away from doing what it is that you say you want to do.
Why do you think ghosts and the paranormal world are so popular these days that everybody wants to become an investigator or a ghostbuster?
Well, because nobody has definitive answers. And for a long time, up until really recently, there was the opportunity that everybody saw to get on TV and everything else. And, to be honest, from day one, I explained to the people that I work with, we don't need to try to get on TV. What we need to do is be able to focus on the task at hand and help people. And if those things happen, you can measure your options and everything else as they come, but whatever. Personally, I took it as an approach. I've always wanted to be a writer. There are countless stories out there that need to be told that will never be told. I like to proceed and try to find those stories. Along the way, if I can help people, then that's what makes me sleep comfortably at night. I want to be able to bring these stories to people's attention because I think people understand that these are things that are tangible, but they either fear it or they just don't have the time, in this immediate gratification society that we live in. And so I love going out there and doing the work on the history and helping the people and everything else. And so I really don't know. But frankly, 90% of paranormal investigating is boring. It really is. Because 95 out of 100 places, there's not a heck of a lot going on to begin with. And if there is, any skeptic's going to explain away anything you experience. And so you really have to dig, and you really have to find these places that are truly exceptional. And you have to focus there, and you have to try to gather as many answers as you possibly can.
With all the television shows on about paranormal investigators, ghost hunters, and now with the Ghost Hunter movie out there, do these programs act as a pro or a con for legitimate investigators like yourself?
Well, I think when it comes down to, 3 out of 4, it seems, ends up rigging evidence or rigging occurrences or something like that. That becomes difficult because, frankly, the integrity, once your integrity is gone, you're over with.
Right.
I mean, whether you're on TV or not, I mean, if there are holes in your integrity, then you don't need to be anywhere near this field, because this field is chock full of everything, full of skepticism. And if you are questionable as far as integrity, then you stand no chance. You could gather the best evidence that's ever been documented in the history of ever. But the bottom line is, if there's holes in your integrity, it's just simply not going to matter. And so you're not doing anybody any favors by being out there. And so I think, and the thing is, when I present my books to people, I say, you know what, I am not here to provide you a belief system. Whether you believe or you don't, or whatever the case might be, that is not my job. I am here to present this book to you. You read it. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get scared, because they're scary stories. I hope that I wrote it well, and I hope that you enjoy what comes out of it. I am not trying to turn a skeptic into a believer. That is not my job, nor do I care to do that, because, frankly, that's an impossible task. It's one that I just don't have time for, because the back and forth constant of, well, you go prove this to me. Well, I don't need to go prove anything to anybody, because, frankly, if you wanted proof of it, you'd get off your butt and you'd go prove it yourself. And so to me, I present these stories as something, and I say, and I'll flat tell you, this is how it happened.
All right,
whether you believe it or not, that's entirely up to you.
All right, my friend, stand by. We've got to take our final break. X-Zone Nation. Brandon Callahan is our guest. His Facebook page is facebook.com/Callahan author. I'm Rob McConnell. We'll be back on the other side as we wrap up here in the X-Zone from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Named one of the world's greatest psychics, Elizabeth Joyce is now giving readings worldwide via Skype. Elizabeth Joyce is recognized for her clairvoyant ability to help find missing persons, her analysis of dreams, past life regression work, mediumship, and her accurate predictions. Elizabeth has been a frequent guest on the X-Zone radio show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, now for several years. For an appointment with Elizabeth Joyce, call 201-934-8986 or Skype at elizabeth.joyce. And for more information, you can always visit Elizabeth Joyce online at www.new-visions.com. Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com.
Wouldn't you love to know the secret to everything? Well then, meet Dr. Kimberly McGeorge and her cutting-edge breakthrough knowledge that combines science with possibility. Dr. Kimberly brings real-life answers and healing to those open to alternative solutions. She teaches solution-based programs and classes that will change all areas of your life forever. Specializing in conscious creation, intuitive readings, and energy medicine, you can rapidly shift health, relationships, business, and money and abundance challenges quickly. Receive her best-selling book, Secret to Everything, at no cost by going to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone. That's right. Transformation can start now. Just go to secrettoeverything.com/X-Zone and receive Dr. Kimberly's book for free.
This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell. Brandon Callahan is our special guest this hour. And if you'd like to visit Brandon on Facebook, his Facebook page is facebook.com/Callahan author. First of all, Brandon, thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. I wish you continued success. What words of wisdom or caution do you have for anyone who is contemplating becoming a paranormal investigator and who's expecting everything to be in reality like it is on TV?
Sure, absolutely. Well, and thanks for having me, Rob. I would say anybody that wants to get into the field, do as much reading as you can possibly do. Find what it is that's drawing you in and read as much about it as you possibly can, be it study of demons, study of history, study of anything that would involve, be it witchcraft or whatever it might be. Be as knowledgeable as you possibly can. Understand what you're getting into. And then when you get out there, number one, I will say, limit how much you are mocking. Limit how much you are antagonizing. Limit that. Because, frankly, it's out there if you look for it and you look in the right place. Don't offend it, because it just isn't worth it. And if you read my first book, that's The House Where Evil Lurks, you'll understand that one of the reasons that I wrote that book is to tell you that I was the dumbass. I paid a big price for being that guy that thought he was just the tough guy that was out there. And I'll be the first to admit that I was the moron. That was one of the main reasons I wanted that story to get out there, so you understand that these things come with a very severe price. And if you read the new book, Remains, you'll understand that so many things on such a different level are out there that it doesn't take that. It doesn't require that. Be respectful of where you're at. Be respectful of the history and the people involved. And I guarantee you the results come. It's not something that you have to coerce. If you were involved in a real case that has this type of activity, you don't need to be a jerk to get results. It's that simple. That's one of the biggest things. I mean, I've seen people throwing fisticuffs in the air and effing this and, bombing that and everything else. And it's just not necessary. It's not necessary, and it's not worth it.
So where do we go from here in the world of the paranormal? We've got about a minute left.
That's the beautiful thing, is there really aren't any rock-solid answers. And so everybody that wants to get out there, please get out there. But be respectful and be open-minded. Don't shut yourself off to possibilities. The word impossible should not even be in your dictionary, because everything is possible. And, go read these stories and find out. They're from all different aspects, whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, demons, ghosts, witches. It's all out there. But just be careful what you wish for, because it's certainly a thing that's out there waiting in the darkness, and you just got to be careful what you're dealing with.
Brandon, we've run out of...
Everybody get out there and take care of each other as well.
All right, Brandon, thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to the next time you join us back here in the X Zone. Until then, congratulations on your books, and be safe out there, my friend.
Thanks, Rob. Take care.
You too. X Zone Nation, my guest this hour has been Brandon Callahan. Facebook.com, Callahan Author. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. We'll be back on the other side of the news with Jose Escamilla talking about the moon, buildings on the moon, Roswell rods, UFOs, and much more. Don't go away.